So matrix report type is used to display data grouped and summarized. So you can either group the data as well as you can provide a summary of data. And you can see that it would be similar to pivot or cross tabs that is available in the other systems, but it's not identical, right? So data is grouped in a row group, and optionally we can also add a column grouping. So the values that are displayed can be aggregated, or you can also add calculations, sum. There are multiple options that we have. So the report is processed. It will display both vertical and horizontal. Let me put it on a slide. So right side you will see a small image wherein it will help us to see how the data will be displayed.
Okay.
So you can see it is grouped and summarized, and we can also do a drillable option. Drillable meaning you can get into the detail of the data and then you can see values out of it, and also you can do further drill down. So we will see it on the demo. So the left side, all the data that we are seeing is on the rows. So you can see there are multiple rows that are populated for the location. Similarly, we can also add a column which is saying the performance rating of an individual. And finally, it is showing the count total number of performance rating in that particular location. And this also has the grand total as well. So similar way that we do it on the pivot table. But the challenge would be, even if you share it with the user for them to self-service, right, who is not authorized to view the summary of data, then there will be an error that that will appear for the user when they try to attempt to run the report. Yeah, and so the quick definition of a matrix report is how we will start with the creation of matrix report. So when defining the matrix report, the definition should be the summary. So you have to, under the matrix, so there are multiple tabs, you have to add the the group, row grouping, as well as the column grouping is an optional one. So but definitely you have to add a row grouping, otherwise we will not be able to run the report. So row grouping is mandatory, and then column grouping is optional, and finally we have the summarization of data. So you must at least add one row grouping and one summarization. By default, the summarization type will be count.
Okay.
And we will discuss more about the summarization type while looking into the demo. Okay. So let's start with the overview of a report, and then we will build a report, right? So I have built a report called gender summary. This is a matrix report type, and then I have chosen all the index data source, which is worker for HCM reporting, and it has a filter to bring only active employees.
Okay.
This is an index report, and it has a primary business object as worker. So you can now see the relation between data source and primary business object. For this data source, this is the primary business object. If we are adding any fields into it, it should be either directly from the primary business object, or it should be related to the primary business object.
Okay.
Right? So these are the tabs that we have while we build the matrix report. If you see in advance, you will have other additional tab called subfilter. Here there is a different option, but most of the tabs look similar. However, there are some additions that can be done on the advanced type report.
Okay.
So on the matrix tab, this is the most primary thing that we have to configure, which we have seen, that the row grouping, column grouping, and summarization.
Okay.
So when I say row grouping, it's basically the way that we want the data to be appearing on the report. So here I've mentioned as gender. So I want the row grouping should be showing me the genders that we have in the system, like male, female, or not declared, etc. And then on the column grouping, I haven't mentioned anything because I just want the summary to be only based on the gender. By default, when we build a matrix report, the column, the maximum number of rows will be 200 something.
Okay.
Similarly, for columns, it will be less, like 20, I believe. So while we
Okay.
create a demo one, I will show you. But we can add a maximum of 12,000 rows. For
Okay.
rows, in columns, we can add 250.
Okay.
So these are some of the numbers. Why I'm stressing it out is, while building a matrix report, we might see whatever rows that are mentioned here, after which it will be summarized. It will not show the data. So
Okay.
we will not get the accurate information otherwise. So that's where
Okay.
it's important to mention the maximum number of rows so that the report will have provide the accurate information.
Okay.
And finally, we have the summarization tab. So I have added both count and percentage as well for the gender. So
Okay.
likewise, we can add multiple summarization tab. And the next most important thing on the matrix report is drill down option. So drill down option plays a major role in the matrix report, because when we say summary of data, then we should allow end user to go in detail and look into the data, and that should help them to validate the data as well as get in deeper to take some decisions. So now what I have mentioned here is I have added a drillable field: country, location, supervisory org, and compensation grade. So if a user runs this report, they will get to see the data by gender and the total number of, the count of genders in the entire organization. And now, as a user, if I wanted to look into that same data by country, we will not be ended up in creating an additional report. Rather, if we add a drillable option, the same report would help the user to filter the fields and look the data as per their requirement. Sometimes we might receive a request saying, hey, I want gender by country, right? So we will, so by the time we would have added a existing report that will be showing gender and the summary. So what we will do is we will end up in creating a copy of that report, and then we will add a country, which is not needed in this case. So with this drillable option, we can directly add multiple drillable options so that the end user can filter the data accordingly. And the detailed data. So what data should be displayed when the user click the number? The number meaning the count, right? The summary. So these are the fields that I would be interested to see when I click the count of gender. So for example, let's take, there are 20 females that are showing on the gender. So if I wanted to look into who the 20 are, then I should have some identical information, unique information, who they are. So that's where I added employee ID, worker, job title, location, country, comp, rating current, and supervisory organization. We also have an current rating indicator option. This is part of the analytical indicator that I will cover it in the next slide. And what I also mentioned is I wanted to sort this data by employee ID so that it comes in the ascending order. And it will also help the user to search and find it easily. Otherwise, it will have a mix-up of data. It will take more time for them to identify the data. So these are some of the useful tips that would be that can be used when you build a report. And I haven't added any filter because I already added a data source filter to fetch only active workers. But if in case, if I wanted to show some additional prompts, I can probably add filters here. Let's say if I wanted to show only male or female, then I can add a filter saying gender. Let me quickly try to add, and then I will show it to you. So I'm trying to restrict the row to show only the information that is available. Like I'm going to mention to show only female. So in this way, we can restrict. So this is kind of an hardcode filter. So here is a tidbit. Mostly the report writer should avoid adding a filter unless and otherwise if it is an indexed one. So since this field is an indexed field, there are two ways to identify. One, you can click that related action of the field and you can see whether this field is an indexed field. By clicking on the indexing information, you can see that there are 3, which means this field is indexed for filter as well as group by, as well as facet filter, as well as aggregation,
Okay.
which means this is an indexed field. So suppose some field will not be indexed for filter, but it will be indexed for group by, facet, aggregation. In that way, if you use this field on the filter condition, then the report will take more time to run. Right? So when I click on this number, it is also saying that these are the data source in which it has been indexed. This field has been indexed. Similarly, you can look into that respective field. So that's where it is. And also the second method is you can find this icon is in yellow color. Normally the regular icons will have the blue color, but if it is an indexed field, it will look in a different color. That is also a second way to identify whether this field is an index or a non-indexed field. So most of the time it is a good practice that the report writer make it as a prompt rather than a filter. So there are multiple options in the comparison type that I wanted to make this field as a prompt. So when I say prompt the user for the value, it will become a mandatory prompt. Without entering any information, you will not be able to run the report. When I say the prompt the user for value and ignore the filter condition if the value is blank, then it will become an optional prompt. The user can either enter the value or they can ignore. The third one is a value from another field, wherein we are trying to compare this with another field of the similar nature. Fourth one is the specified in this filter, which means we are going to hard code this filter. So now I'm going to put it as a optional prompt rather than the mandatory prompt. So when I say that by default it is picking the default prompt, if it is a date field or some other field, you can go and choose this as a starting or ending prompt. So you have multiple options. So sometimes when you add a date, higher date or something, if you want to compare, maybe you want to know how many, you wanted to look into the specific period, then you can choose a start and end date based on the higher date. Otherwise, if you have multiple prompts in this and you wanted to define which prompt is for what use, you can use prompt 1, prompt 2, prompt 3, etc. So those are some of the additional information. So when I added this prompt, if this is the populate undefined prompt default, when I click this, you will see whatever filter or prompts that I have manually added will automatically populate here along with the regular prompts. So these are the prompts that are called as inbuilt prompts, which will be associated with either the data source or the data source filter. So some data source and data source filter will have a default built-in prompts. So you can see if I click here, this access worker as its primary object and returns one row, include active not terminated, contains built-in prompts for worker type, employee type, contingent worker type. Sometimes we will not know, we wouldn't have added the filter, but when I looked into the prompt, it will automatically have some values and we will be worried how this is coming. Then we can look into the filter, data source filter or data source. If filter is not there, you will find this information on the data source itself, but you will not be able to avoid this inbuilt prompts, so which will be part of the report design. So once I added, we can see that it has been populated, and now I'm going to decide whether how I wanted to show this data, whether if I wanted to show it as a chart or table or both chart and table. Now I have defined it as chart and table, and I want this chart type to be in a donut format. So we have multiple options in the chart type like clustered, stacked, bar. So based on the requirement that the user comes with, we can define. So if I wanted to compare two different options for multiple countries, like let's take, if I wanted to report it by country and gender, maybe I can go with the column clustered or column stack. So it depends on the requirement that we have. For this, I prefer to choose donut so that it will show a quick split of how many male versus female. And these are all some of the mandatory we have to choose. So which legend I wanted to show, whether if I wanted to show, since I haven't added the column, it is not displaying here. If I would have added the column, it will also show up here. And then I can also, if I add multiple metrics, so you can see I have added two summarization of data. One is count, the other one is percent. So here I can show whether if I wanted to show the metric 1 or metric 2. Metric 1 is the count, metric 2 is the percentage. So I can decide which one I can show if you add multiple metrics. And then I also enable this as worklet. Just in case when we do the dashboard, we can use the similar report. And this is one of the key thing. Display this worklet when maximized, run a different report when maximized. Meaning, if I say display this worklet when maximized, in dashboard, all the worklets will be shrinked to fit into that respective box. So if there are more data, you will be clicking view more. When you click view more, it will take, if I choose this option, it will take me to only to this report. When I say run a different report, maybe if user clicks that view more, it should take them to a detailed report, like an advanced report. Then I can add that advanced report name here, so that when the user clicks view more, it will take to that advanced report rather than this report, right? And then we have this refresh data, which has two options. One is every sign on, one or every time. So in dashboard, we might probably face some issues, like whenever you move between tabs, it will take time to load. So in this way, if I say every time, so once you logged into the dashboard, even if you move between tabs, the data will be static, it will not change. But when you say every sign in, whenever you move, whenever you hover over between the tabs, then it will refresh. And this worklet icon, it's up to us to decide whether if I wanted to mention it as a dashboard or you have a dashboard option. It depends on the requirement, like how we wanted to show it on the dashboard. So these are the most important things I would say, because if we are sharing it with all authorized user, they will be able to identify that this report would meet the requirement by looking into the description of the help text. When you are adding multiple prompts or something, so you do not know what this report definition is, whether if you have added gender or even though if you have the name, you can also mention that drill down options or the detailed data that you have added, so that by looking into the help text, the user can see, okay, this report would probably help me to get the requirement that I have, right? And then sharing has three options. One, we can share this with all authorized user or specific user, or else we can also do not share, and then you can schedule it. So on the advanced report, you can see it says optimized for performance. So it is checked so that I want this report to run faster, right? So I'm going to give OK. So now I will see all the prompts that I've given. Since I haven't made it as a mandatory, you're not finding that asterisk symbol here, red color. Otherwise, if it is a mandatory, you will find that red asterisk here. So let me run it for full the entire organization. Then we can filter and see. So now I have run this report. You can see how the data is displayed here. So these are the summary of data. This is the chart that I have chosen, the donut chart. And so we were discussing about the drillable field, right? So what it does is, so here there is a small drop down arrow. So whatever drillable fields that I have provided over there, it is showing up here, like compensation, location, country, and primary. So let's say that I want this data to be showed by country. If I click that, you can see this data is converted by country, right? Similarly, if I wanted to, let's take this as an example, not declared. I wanted to view this data by compensation grade. So you can see, I can see this data by compensation. Who are these 5? So these 5 are placed in these compensation grades. Again, if I wanted to do an additional filter, so this is the functionality within matrix report, which will enable user to do 2-level filters, 2-level drill down. So if I wanted to see this by compensation grade and by country, then if I add that filter, you can see the data is changed completely by compensation grade and country. So I can also make this data appear in a chart version as well. When I click this bar graph, you can see the same data will be looking in a chart also. The challenge would be we will not be able to print this chart. Workday doesn't allow us to print. Only you can export this tabular column in Excel format or
Oh,
PDF format. So you will not be able to print this chart. So either you can take a screenshot and put it, or anyway. So the main reason for that is to Workday wants the user to get into the system and look into the data rather exporting it.
okay.
So
So is it,
so
I mean, is it only with the chart or they can print any reports?
no, only with the chart, not the report. Reports they can print. See, if I click PDF, it is downloaded. If I click Excel, I can download it in Excel. See, it is showing me.
Okay.
It can be printed in PDF or Excel, but not the chart. You couldn't see any
Okay.
option over there. But the other good thing on the chart is before that, so there is a configuration option with we have in the chart. So by default, based on the data, see, I haven't defined any chart type, right? I just clicked on this. Automatically, it populated by column clustered. So if I wanted to change this view, or if I wanted to configure, I can change. If I click on this 3 configure item, I can change the chart type.
Okay.
So let's say if I want this by stack, or if they want this by column clustered, or if I wanted to show this by donut. So it depends on the requirement. So if it's purely based on my interest, how I want to look into the data, as well as we can inform the same to the end user so that it will attract their eyes as well. So
Okay.
here also we can configure, like we have only tried to see the charts, right? Now we will see how to interchange the data axis, y-axis and x-axis. Here I say it says compensation grade, and here it says metrics, because by default it has been chosen as compensation grade as the primary one. But on the report definition, we will be able to change the look as well. Whether if I wanted to show by country, and if I change it here by country, and then let's say if I change it here by compensation grade, so you can see the data is completely changed now. So likewise, you can also look into the configure and see whether the data has been changed. And you can also choose the count of metrics. So these are our additional values that we have. So similarly, how we are seeing the data here, the same way we can drill down and see even more further when you get into the data itself. So we have given some detailed information, right? Like employee ID, employee, to identify who that employee is. So I'm going to click this count 229 to see who those employees are. So now you can see all the detailed field that I have given is appearing here. Employee ID, worker, job title, location, country, compensation grade, rating, and supervisory organization. So this is an analytical indicator. So you can see there are like this employee is on 4.5 rating, so it is showing 4 stars. Similarly, this employee is on the 3 rating, so it's showing 3 stars. So we can define these analytical metrics also. Let me show you. So this report contains only rows and columns. I mean only rows, right? Here, let's get into a detailed view. So in this report, I haven't chosen the index data source. I have chosen only standard data source, and I'm going to run and show it to you how this report looks like. This will actually show the employee review rating. So you can see how quickly the data is populated. Even if I have mentioned a standard data source, it's just showing the summary of data. So that's why it is not taking much time. So it will show the rating current followed by the count. Again, it will help us to do a drill down. I wanted to see who needs improvement. Who are these 24? Then I can click and you will see all this. See, even I've added the photo as well. So you can see the photo, employee name, job profile. So this is an analytical indicator as well, critical job. I have converted the value into this indicator. And then you can see that the ratings, there are different stars and as well as the comp ratio, whether if it is a low or medium or high. So these are all some of the analytical indicators. So the good option is we can show both values as well as the analytical indicator. Okay, so that's the briefing about matrix report. You have any questions on this?
No, like I just want to practice one of the report, like, and then ask you questions if I come across anything.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So let's see, the next topic is analytical indicator. So analytical indicator is actually it can be visually categorized and group data. Like we can show the status that we have seen that employee rating, right? It is showing in stars, or even we can add a tick mark, or we can indicate the status, display ratings, illustrate progress, and highlight data exceptions. So the mining depends entirely on the context of the report and how you wanted to show the analytical indicator, how it has been configured as well. So it's purely based on the vision of the report writer to show the data how it has to be. So, and to attract the eyes of the end user. So analytical indicator are associated with a given field on a given business object. You can only add the analytical field on the given field and corresponding business object. And they will be available for use anywhere in the given business object field is used in a report in the given tenant, right? So you can use the same analytical field anywhere. So there are two ways. Either you can create a report specific analytical indicator, or you can use a system wide used analytical indicator. So it can be used any of the reports as well, and it can be used in that specific report. So when you view the analytical indicator definition, you can see where it has been used, showing where it is being used in the tenant also. Similarly, how we look into the report fields, where and all it has been used. So similarly, we can also use the analytical indicator to see which reports is using that indicator, because if a field is being used in multiple reports, then if you are going to make any changes, it will impact the other reports as well. So that's where we have to be careful before modifying any of the existing fields. Either it can be a calculated field or an analytical indicator or any fields that are used based on the custom object. So before changing any fields, we should know where and all it's used and what would be an impact. So you can also create report specific analytical indicator, which will be only visible for a given custom report. And other users cannot use that, and only in that specific report you can use that analytical indicator. So there are two methods, right? One, you can restrict within the report specific, or you can use it in multiple reports. So like when you create a calculated field, you can create a report specific calc field, or you can create a usable across all reports like across the tenant calculated field. So when you wanted to restrict it within the report, if there is a similar requirement occurred for another report writer or maybe for another request, then they will ended up in creating a new calculated field. So we will have so many calculated fields for the same purpose built in the tenant. So in that way, we have to make sure that mostly we should go with calculated fields that can be usable across the tenant rather than the report specific, right? So general consideration that we should follow is only one analytical indicator can be specified for a column on a report. So you cannot add multiple analytical indicator, and only simple conditional rules can be specified in the analytical indicator rule itself. So you cannot add multiple or complex conditional rules. So to implement more complex condition, you should probably end up in creating a calculated field. So you will not be able to use that on the analytical indicator. So for matrix report, in the
So
matrix
I
view,
just have a question. So
yeah.
the analytic indicators are used on every report whenever we are trying to group the data or display any particular ratings or any of
Yes.
their talents?
Yes.
Okay.
And for matrix report, you can use it in the matrix view. Analytical indicator can also be displayed only on the fields being aggregated.
Okay.
So you will not be able to add it on the field level. You can use it on the summarization that we create. Yeah. So let's look into the analytical indicator. So let's see a simple one first. So you can see there is an analytical indicator. So let me show you the process. So these are some of the easy steps that we have within Workday. Like when you are with the report itself, and there is a field called options, right? If I
Yes.
wanted to create an analytical indicator, I can directly go here, create analytical indicator for report. So these are the two options that we discussed. So if I say for report only, this report can be used. If I say analytical indicator, we can use it across the tenants.
Okay.
So now I am going to create an analytical indicator. So you are seeing so many options here, right? So what I'm going to mention is I'm going to mention the business object as worker, and then field is rating current. Let us say rating current, and I can define the visualization type. You can see there are so many visualization types that we have, like checkbox, like XR check mark. You can do 5-star rating, flag. These are all used for inbox, and then progress bar, red status, green, yellow, red status, trend arrow, etc. So since it's a rating, I wanted to show a 5-star rating. And then default visualization. So default meaning if there are no data, then I will say
Okay.
no visualization. If there are no data, then do not show it, or no stars. Let's say no stars. And conditions. So I have to define the conditions here. If rating in the selection list is any of this one, like let's say 5-point scale, or we can choose um, 0. So anyway, we have already mentioned if there is a, so we have said no stars, right? So 0 would satisfy
Okay.
in that. Now I'm going to say 1. If I say 1, I can say 1 star. Similarly, I can add another condition. I will say if it is 2, then 2 stars. So we can keep adding multiple options as well until you get the 5-star values. Okay, so once we add, if we save, then it will be there. And we can also add a help text that what this rating will show up, right?
Okay.
So once I do so, it will be displayed here automatically. So current indicator, right? I have mentioned as show icon only, which means the rating will not be showed. The
Okay.
actual rating will not be showed. Rather, it will convert as an icon and it will show. So you have multiple options. Let's look into the options here. Valid options. So I have chosen this two. I have chosen current rating indicator, which is the analytical indicator that we created. And I have
Okay.
mentioned it as show icon only. So
Okay.
for some reports, like if you are creating any custom reports grouping, then we can say related task. So when people click on that, it will take them to that particular task.
Okay.
Or I can also mention a condition saying do not show if it is empty. So don't show me this field at all if it is empty, right? So you might face some situation wherein if do not use if empty would be mentioned, and you would have added that field, and for no employees the data is there, so it will not at all show up on the report.
Okay.
Let's get into the other analytical indicator. So we have seen this visual chart type. So here we have used the check mark, right? Yes or the tick mark. So I have mentioned only one condition where I say, so if the critical job is, if the job is a critical job, right, equal to S, then show me a green check mark. And also I have added a help text here so that when people tries to click or hover over near to that, it will show them this help text. And we have another option as well, which has been for comp ratio. It shows the trend arrow, no visualization I have mentioned for default. So it will show whether if it is a high or low or down or middle. So if this ratio falls in between this, so we have already added a condition. You can see that I cannot mention the comp ratio. Like you can only add one condition here, right? We will not be able to add multiple conditions. So in that way, we have to create a calculated field. For this, we have created a calculated field. And to see that comp ratio is greater than this or less than this, so that it will, if it is fitting into this period, then it will probably display the trend arrow based on that. So these are some of the additional analytical indicator. Do you have any questions on the analytical indicator?
I'm just not very confident in this topic. Maybe it's new to me or it's just. I just want to
Uh,
go through it again and then ask you the question.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So this is basically, see, normally you see, if you are familiar with share market or stock market, right? There
Mm-hmm.
you see, along with the values, it will show whether if the share is high or low, that arrow mark, right?
Okay.
So by looking into that, we can immediately understand whether if the shares is going high or low. So what
Yes.
they will add is, they will add a down arrow for red, they will add a up arrow green, so
Yes.
that we will know. So these are all some of the data representation. So how you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to represent your data, how you want to make the end user understand the data and take decisions. These
Okay.
are all some of the additional features. Like if in case you wanted to show that there is an increase of headcount in a specific organization. So normally what people do, say for example, in an organization 1, there are 10 employees. In organization 2, there are 12 employees. So they will have to manually compare the 10 versus 12 to
Okay.
determine whether if there is an increase or decrease. Rather, if you show that arrow mark, this will quickly help them to see, okay, there is an increase, there is a decrease. It's actually a trend. You can show that
Okay.
trend and make the data look good. And sometimes if there is a negative impact, like there are so many terminations happening in an organization, so you can show that arrow mark down or even red symbol, there is a red symbol also, you can show that and tell them that, hey, here there is a major decrease in the turnover ratio. So it's all like a high catching, like wherever you see that red mark or green mark, we know that there is an impact or something. Let me also show you here this one. Let me rerun it. So now it would be easy for you to relate. It actually will help us to take a quick overview rather getting into detailed analysis. So I have given needs improvement, right? So when I say needs improvement, these employees are poor performers.
Okay.
Not so poor, but they need some improvement. So in that
Okay.
case, I'm going to see what is the rating. So if I say 3 or 2, whatever, now it gives a quick understanding of the data. Like it says 2-star. So I know, okay, they are low performers. And then I'm going to look into the comp ratio. whether they are getting more compensation or less compensation or in the market standard. So this person is getting less because it shows down arrow. So in that case, it is better. So the management will take decision saying that, okay, this employee is a need improvement employee. However, their comp ratio is less. If, let's say, for this employee, Amanda, the rating is needs improvement, but the comp ratio is high, then the management will take a decision, okay, this employee is not performing well, but their salary is high. So
Yeah.
the management will take some decisions. Okay, we have to look into we have to focus on this employee. They can put this employee on a succession plan, or they can put this employee on an improvement plan, performance improvement plan. There are so many options. So this will quickly give them, by looking into the 0.874, it would be difficult to determine why what it is and how to compare, right? This will help us to take a quick decision. So that
Okay.
is the main purpose of analytical indicator.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So let's see the different report type. This is called as a transpose report. How to create a transpose report. So there are around 8 report types we have in Workday, right? We have seen that
Mm-hmm.
simple, advanced, matrix, composite, transpose, trending, search, inbox.
Yes.
So now we are going to see the transpose report. So the transport report in simple terms, we can compare it with the Excel pay special values transpose, right? So
Mm-hmm.
how it works, let me show you. So we have this data, right? See, when I export that, you will not see that analytical indicator, because that is just for display purpose. You will not see that on the report data.
Okay.
So let's copy this data. So I'm removing all the fields that do not have any data inside.
Okay.
So now you are seeing that the data is appearing like this. If I wanted to transpose this data, so I'm just copying it. I'm using pay special values. Okay, and you can see there is an option called transpose.
Transpose. Okay.
Now you can see it has changed,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
So we are going to build report just using the same option. However, we have
Okay.
some additional features in Workday which will help us to do some more further drill downs on it.
Okay.
So this is the quick overview of the transpose report. So
Okay.
let's read the definition of it. A transport report interchanges the rows and corresponding columns on the report. So it actually interchanged. Whatever we had it on the row, we have changed it to columns. Similar way, columns has come to the rows. The transport report enables you to build a report in which reports rows are used as columns. That is, rows are transported into columns. Building a transport report enables you to. So what fields that you wanted to display as an image as well. You can also display an image. Create reports that enable side-by-side comparison and build related worklets for business process step. So basically, if being a manager, if he or she wanted to compare the team members, how they are performing, what is their compensation, which location they are based out of, or what is their job title, how many years of experience that they have, right? So those information, rather looking into employee by rows, they can see a quick comparison. You can see how the data is looking out here. You have the rows in columns and the columns in row. So this will give a quick picture. Okay, this employee is a high performer. This employee is not an high performer, but both have 10 plus years of experience, right? Even though if they are having a similar experience, this employee is performing well, this employee is performing less. And then they can also see, okay, this employee is an high potential employee, but medium risk. This employee will not leave the organization. But this
Okay.
employee is promotable because he's an high performer, he has a good experience, so we can promote him. And as well, since he's an high performer and a high experience, definitely it's a high risk to retain him. So that's why. So these are the comparison that the manager can take.
Okay.
So let us look into the demo report. So this report has been converted into a table view, right? You can see name of an employee. I have added these fields into it, like type, location, what is the, so it will give a quick information. Okay, this employee is based out of New York. This employee is based out of Chicago. So likewise, we can do further comparison that we have seen on the screen, on the presentation. So I'm going to click into this report definition to see how to configure. So I have used worker where processing worker is supervisor or manager. So we can also use multiple report definition, like you can also use all active and terminated worker, or you can use different workers wherein if you wanted to report the worker. So it's up to the report writer to choose the data source. And then once you can see the again the tabs are different. I mean, some of the tabs are different, like you have rows, sort, filter, and rest are same. Filter, prompts, output, share, and advanced will be same, similar to other reports. So now here is the thing. When you add this, you can add a column heading, which will say what the heading should be. I can add a column heading, right? And then I can also add a field in the column heading. Like if I wanted to say this report, I mean, this is a category that I wanted to show, or if I wanted to show employee photo on the top, I can do so. The header, basically the header and the footer, right? And then the image field, I can add an image field wherein I wanted to show for a specific employee. So I can add that employee photo here, so that by default it will fetch all the employees there. Also, I can add a field here as a photo. Like I can also add the fields on the rows wherein I can also group. So if you would have noticed, when I run this report, so you can see it says my team members, right? So I have grouped this with the label called my team members. That's why this my team members are appearing. So likewise, you can add multiple groups. Let's say if I wanted to group it by job, so I can add a job, and then what and all fields related to the job, like job title, business title, I can add there.
Okay.
And then if I'm grouping by compensation, so I can mention compensation, and I can mention salary per month, salary yearly, and then comp ratio, etc. And if I wanted to group it by talent, I can put succession plan, retention risk, low impact, etc. So this grouping is just to group the columns, and then you can add multiple fields here that will display, right? So I haven't added any filters, or so we can also sort this data, like my reporting type. We can also sort this data, and then we can make it in a proper way. So we have made it as a alphabetical ascending, so that's why it's coming in an alphabetical order.
Okay.
And then the prompt we have used as default. So it's up to, I mean, it's a default coming in, the built-in prompts coming in from the data source, right? You can see built-in prompts reporting type. So in some report, you can see that it will be like a label which says built-in prompts. In some report, it will be added in the description itself.
Okay.
And then again, you can add this into a dashboard also, right? You can also share it with people. So these are some of the additional features that we have. So let's design the report during our tomorrow's class, how to design the transports report by adding fields and grouping, right?
Okay.
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 Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do you have any further questions?
No.